Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Tim Tokwe. If this is your first time here, thank you for stopping by, and if you are a returning subscriber, thank you for checking in again. So today we are going to be making this beautiful peplum dress. So if this is what you're interested in, you want to continue watching this video, do not forget to like, comment, and also subscribe to this channel if you are yet to do so. So this will be the starting line, and from the starting line I'm going to be marking the bust point, which is 10 inches. I'm also going to be marking the under bust, and that is 13 inches. And then the half length, which is 15.5 inches. Then I'm going to be drawing a straight line across each of these points. So on the starting line, I'm going to be taking the shoulder measurement. So I'm going to divide the shoulder into two. The shoulder is 15 divided by 2, that is 7.5. Then I'm also going to be marking the neck. I'm going to be using 3.5 inches for the neck width. And then the neck depth, I'm going to be using 5.5. This is because the style does not show any cleavage, so 5.5 inches is enough. So if you notice that the neck part is in 3 parts, one part comes straight, then another goes like this, and then the other come like a V shape. So for the part that comes down, I'm going to be using 3.5 inches, and then I'm going to be using my ruler. But I'm not going to place the ruler very straight. I'm going to bend it slightly like this. Then at this point, I'm going to be marking 2 inches horizontally like this. So this will be the second part of the neck. So I'm going to be drawing a line across it like this, a straight line like this. And then the remaining part, I'm going to be connecting it to the 5.5 inches in a V-shaped manner. So I'm just going to use my ruler to do this. So this will give us the neck shape. So now I already have my shoulder measurements mark, which is 7.5. So from this point, I'm going to come down by 1 inch, and then I'm going to be connecting to the neckline. So from this point, I'm going to be getting my armhole depth. And to do this, I'm going to be dividing the bust measurements by 6 and then add 1.5 inch. So the bust measurement is 37 divided by 6 is 6 inches approximately. So plus 1.5, that will give me 7.5. So I'll just mark that there. And then I'm going to draw a line across this point. And this will serve as my chest line. So now I'm going to be connecting from this shoulder to the chest line. And so this will give me my armhole. So this armhole, I'm going to measure the length. I'm going to mark the middle. And then at that middle, I'm going to come in by 1/2 inch. And then on the chest line, I'm going to be taking the bust measurement. But before doing that, let me label this line. This is the chest line, the bust point, the under bust, and this is the waistline. So now on the chest line, I'm going to be dividing the bust measurement into 4. And that will give me 9.25. So I'm going to mark that. And now I'm going to be connecting these 3 points together. So I'm going to use my curve rule to do that. Next, on the bust point, we are going to be placing our dart. So I'm going to use half of the nipple to nipple measurement for this. So the nipple to nipple measurement is 7 inches, half is 3.5. So I'm going to be marking this on the bust point and also on the waistline. And I'm going to be connecting it together with a straight line. So at the under bust, I'm going to be taking 1/2 inch at this front part. And then on the other side, I'm going to be taking 1.5 inches. Then I'm going to be doing the same thing on the waistline. And I'm going to be connecting these points with straight lines. So from the under bust, I'm going to be using my curve to connect towards the bust point, just like this. And I'm also going to do the same thing to the other side. So the dart on this pattern is going to be a princess dart. So I'm going to connect from the bust point to somewhere above the middle of the armhole. So I'm going to be using my curve to do this also. So you can see the way I'm placing my curve. I'm not placing it directly at the middle of the armhole. I'm placing it somewhere above it. So I'm just going to draw the curve to the armhole this way. So at this armhole, we are going to be taking 1 inch dart allowance. So I'm going to mark it here and then connect it to the bust point. So I'm going to be connecting this with my curve also. Then I'm going to be extending this a bit. This is because we are going to be cutting away this part. So we are going to be placing it on this extension. So I'm going to, by the time I cut away this part, it's going to shorten the armhole. So I'm going to measure the 1 inch that I took there and then mark it here, then connect it back to the chest line. So this will serve as our new armhole. So on the chest line, if you notice that we already took some allowance where we have the darts, you can see that we took some part away where we have the darts. So I'm going to mark what we have there, and this is about 1/4 of an inch, and then I'm going to be placing it back on the chest line. So now the under bust, I'm going to be dividing the under bust measurement by 4, and so that will give me 7.5. Then I'm going to mark it. Then I'm going to mark what I have for my dart allowance there, which is 2 inches, and I'm going to be placing it back. Also on the waistline, I'm going to divide the waist measurement into 4, which is 7 3/4, and then I'm going to mark what I have for the darts, which is 2 inches, and place it back. So now I'm going to be connecting these points together. So note that on this pattern, we did not add any seam allowance, so we are going to be adding the seam allowance while cutting on the fabric. The only thing we added is the dart allowance. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut this out. So you can notice the way I'm cutting the armhole area. So before I continue to cut this any further, I'm going to be placing this on the back part so as to use it to cut the back pattern. So I'm just going to pin it like this, and then I'm going to be marking the points. This is start line, the chest line, the bust point, the under bust, and also the waistline. So I can then remove the pattern, and then I'm going to be drawing a straight line across each of these points. So I'm going to label it the bust point, the under bust, and the waistline. So the first thing I'm going to be doing on this back pattern is on this waistline at the center here, I'm going to be marking 3/4 of an inch, and then I'm going to be connecting this upward. But this is to eliminate the zip bulge. The next thing I'm going to be doing is to mark the zipper allowance. So I'm going to be using 1.5 inches for this zipper allowance, and then I'm going to be marking it on all the points all the way to the start line. So what I actually need for this zipper allowance is 1 inch. So this 1.5 inch already include the stitching allowance. So by the time I'm cutting on the fabric, I'm not going to be adding any allowance. So this part is where we are going to be cutting away. That's why I'm making a star with it. So on the starting line, we are going to be taking the shoulder measurement. We divide it into 2, which is 7.5. The shoulder measurement is 15. So the neckline, we used 3.5 for the neck width earlier. And now the neck depth, I'm going to be using 2 inches for the back. So because I don't want it to go up too much. So just like I did to the front, I'm not going to make my ruler so straight. I'm going to bend it a little. And then I'm going to be connecting it to the 2 inches mark. So at the shoulder, I'm just going to extend the neckline to the zipper area. So at the shoulder point there, I'm going to come down by 1 inch. I'm going to mark it and connect it towards the neckline. Then from the shoulder there, I'm going to be connecting it directly to the chest line, and that will be the armhole. So on the chest line, I'm going to be taking the bust measurement, but before that, I'm going to mark the middle of this armhole and then come in by 1/2 of an inch, and then I'm going to be taking the bust measurement now on the chest line. You can see that I'm not placing the tape at the zipper area, so I'm placing it after the zipper area, so make sure you do the same. So I'm going to be marking 9.25 inches now, which is what I have after dividing my bust into 4. So now I'm going to be connecting these 3 points together with my curve. Next, I'm going to be taking the that measurement. So I'm using half of the nipple to nipple measurement, which is 3.5, and I'm going to be placing this at the waistline. So you can see where I have it. So I'm also going to be placing it on the chest line, but because this is not straight, so I'm going to be measuring from the middle here, and I have 6 inches to the that point. So I'm going to be marking 6 inches on the chest line too. So this is so that I can get a straight line. So on the waistline, on both sides, I'm going to be taking half of an inch as a dart allowance. And I'm going to be connecting this upward. So the dart for this back is also be a princess dart also. So I'm going to be connecting from the bust point to the armhole area. So I'm going to be using this curve. So if I connect from the chest line to the armhole, it's going to be too sharp. So I'm going to be connecting from the bust point to the armhole area. So at the armhole, what I'm just going to do is to extend it by half of an inch. This is so that by the time I'm joining my dart, I will not have a shortage of fabric. So I'm just going to reconnect back to the chest line like this. So that will be the new armhole. So we already have our bust measurement. So I'm going to be taking the under bust. So you can see where I'm still placing my tape. I'm not placing it at the zipper area. So the under bust divided by 4, that's 7.5. So I'm going to mark the dart allowance, which is half inches. Then on the waistline, I'm also going to divide the waist by 4, and that's 7.75 inches. And then I'm going to mark the dart allowance, which is 1 inch, and place it back. So I'm going to be connecting the lines together. So at this lower part on the waistline, I'm going to be going up by 3/4 of an inch. This is also to eliminate the zip bulge. So if you are slim, you might not really need to do this, but if you are a bit big, then you might need to do it to get the perfect back area. So these places that I start are places that we are going to be cutting off. So I'm just going to go ahead now and cut the pattern. So this is the front part. So I'm cutting the dart area away. So now I have the pattern placed on the fabric, and you can see that I've added some allowance around them. I have half of an inch at the center and the lower part, and also at the shoulder area. But on the side, which is the side front, I have 1.5 inches allowance. So that's how I added my allowance to the fabric. So this is the back part. I also have half of an inch all around, but on the side back, I have 1.5 inches as the same allowance. But on the other side, which is the center and the lower part, and also the shoulder area, I added half inches only. Be cutting a lining to it and iron interfacing to it also. Now we are going to be cutting the flare part. So I have my fabric folded into 4. And then I'm going to be folding it again. So this will make 8 pieces. So for this, we are cutting a 720 degrees flare. And the flare is going to be 3 steps. So this we are going to cut the first step with this. So we are going to be, because we have this fabric folded into it. So to get the waistline, we are going to be dividing the waist by 8. And so when I divide the waist by 8, the waist is 31 divided by 8. I have 3.8 something. So I'm just going to approximate it to 4 inches. So that means that I need 4 inches here to get 4 inches here to give me the waist measurement. And so for the length, what I use for the length is I subtracted the half length from the blouse length. The blouse length is 23, and then I subtracted 15.5 from it. So that gives me 7.5. Then I'm going to be adding 1 inch to it. So that will give me 8.5 for the first layer of the flare. So now to get the waistline, which is 4 inches, I'm just going to be using like a trial method. I'm going to try to put my tape at 3.5 and see. I'm marking this side at the center and also on the other side. Then I'm going to measure it around to see if that is going to give me 4 inches. I can see it gives me about 6 inches, so that's too much. So I'll reduce it to 2.5, and I'm going to mark it all the way like this, and then I'm going to measure. So this one gives me something close to 4 inches, so that means I'm going to be going with the 2.5 inches mark. So I'm going to mark it all the way around like this. And now I'm going to be marking the length. So I needed 8.5 inches for the length. You can see that I have a lot of excess, about 4 inches extra. So I'm just going to try to reduce the fabric, because if I cut it that way, I might end up wasting the fabric. So let me just reduce it so that I'll not have too much excess there. So I've reduced this to 12 inches instead of 15 inches that was there earlier on. And so I'm just going to cut this out so that I can just work on what I needed for the flare. So now I already know that I needed 2.5 inches to get my waistline. So I'm just going to mark the 2.5 all the way to the second end. I'm placing my tape. You can see I'm placing my tape at that point, then marking it all the way around. Then I'm just going to connect it with my chalk like this, my free hand. So now I'm going to be marking the length, which is 8.5. But instead of placing it around that flare and marking it all around, I'm just going to place it at the starting point. So here I have 11 inches. So I'm just going to be marking the 11 inches all the way around. So now I'm going to connect it with my chalk like this, and then I'm going to be cutting it out. So this is going to give me 2 flare. It's going to be, you can see this is what I cut. I can see that it's in 2 pieces. So it's going to give me 2 circles. So now I'm going to be opening these circles up, and then I'm going to be joining them together to give me a single flare. So this fabric actually looks similar, so I'm going to be chalking on the wrong side so that I can know which part is wrong, and I'm not going to mix it up. So now this is what it looks like. You can see how full it is. Then I'm going to join one side, and the other side will go into the zipper area. So we are going to be cutting the second layer of the flare. So I have this fabric folded into 4 also. So the length for this one is going to be 6 inches. The previous one was 8.5. So I'm going to make this one shorter by 2.5 inches. So I'm going to be folding this again. We have 4 pieces now. Folding it again, so we have 8 pieces now. So I already know that I need 2.5 inches to mark at this angle to get my waistline. So I'm just doing that. And then I'm going to connect it together like this. And then I'm going to be marking the length, which is 6 inches. So I'm going to mark 6 inches here, and then I'm going to put my tape at the start, and there I have 8.5 inches. So I'm just going to keep marking 8.5 all the way around. Then I'm going to connect this with my chalk and then cut it out. So I'm also going to be opening this up because I'm also going to have 2 circles because they are both 720 degrees flare. So I'm chalking the wrong side here. Now I'm going to be placing the right side on the right. I'm not going to be joining this together because I'm going to be making a curve at the center here. So you can see the way I'm making the curve. That's the way the style is. So this second layer and the last layer is going to have this curve. Only the first layer that would be round all through. So if you cannot use your free hand, you can also use your curve rule for this. You can even decide to push the curve rule out this way. So this is me showing what you can possibly do. But I'm going to be going with the free hand method that I use. So I'm going to be going with the free hand. The one that I shaped is my free hand. So I'm just going to cut the two together. And next we are going to be cutting the third layer of the flare. So I have this fabric folded into 4 also. And here I have 7.5 inches. So the length I want for this is 4 inches. I want it to be 2 inches shorter than the middle one. So I'm going to fold it again, which is 8 inches. I'm just going to do the same thing I did to the second layer. So I'm going to mark it all around, mark the 4 inches length, and then cut it out. Then I'm also going to be shaping it at the center front. So while cutting it, after cutting it out, I'm going to open it up, the circles, I'm going to open it up and just shape it like this at the center area. And then I'm going to be cutting linings to it. So these are the 3 flares. So I'm going to be cutting linings to them and also add interfacing. I'm going to be using stay. You can decide to use BFF. So this is me just cutting the lining all around. I'm cutting the lining exactly the way I cut the pattern. And then when I'm done, I'm going to iron and interfacing. So you can decide to use BFF, but I use stay, but I think BFF would do a better work. So now this is the front part. I have already ironed stay to it and also my wadding. So this wadding, I make sure that I start about 6 inches below the 6 inches mark from the start line, from the shoulder. And then the side, I make it about 3 inches away from the side. And also the lining, the wadding, I make it stop at the under bust. So now I'm going to be joining it together from the lower part to the waistline, to the armhole, and I'll also do the same thing to the lining. So I already joined it, and you can see that I've also ironed the bustier area. So you can see how it looks. I open it up to iron. So I'm going to be placing the lining on it this way, and then I'm going to be pinning down the neck area. So now I'm going to be stitching it this way. When I get to this ankle, I'll raise my footer up, then come this way, then make a curve here, then to the V shape. Then I make sure that place makes a V. Then I'll raise my footer up at this angle again and mark it straight and stitch it straight. So now I'm done stitching. I'm just notching the angles, and then I'm going to be turning it out. Then I'm going to be using pin to bring out all the angles so that the shape can really come out. So now I'm going to open it up like this and then top stitch on the lining throughout the neck. Then when I'm done, I'm going to be joining the sides here and the second side also. So this is the back part. I'm going to be joining the darts from the lower part to the armhole area also, and I'm also going to do the same thing to the lining. So I already joined it. I'm going to be pinning this down, and then I'm going to be stitching the neckline. So when I'm done stitching, I'm going to open it up to the other side and then top stitch on it. Then I'm going to be joining the zipper area and the side. So this is me joining the zipper area together, pinning it together by 1 inch. After stitching, so we'll be left with 1 inch. So now I pin it together so that I can be able to place it on the front part and use it to shape the bodice. So now I'm going to be joining the shoulders together. You can see the way I'm holding it. So I'm flipping it around with one of the linings, and then I'm going to be stitching together. So I already stitched together, and I've top stitched on the armhole area and the lower parts of the front and the back. So now I'm going to be placing the front on the back like this. I'm going to be pinning them down so that I can join it together. So on the bust point, on the chest line, I'm going to be marking my bust. I'll be dividing it into 2. Now I'm marking what I have left. I have about 3 inches left. So I'm going to divide that into 2, and that will give me 1.5. So I'm marking 1.5 on both sides. So at the under bust area also, I will divide the under bust into 2, which is 15 inches. And now I'll mark what I have left. I have about 3.5. So I'm going to be dividing that into 2. I have 1.25. So I'm marking 1.25 on both sides. So on the waistline, the waist is 31 divided by 2. That will give me 15.5. Then I'm going to mark what I have left, which is about 2.5 inches. And then, so I'm going to divide that into 2, which is 1.25. And I'll be taking 1.25 on both sides. So I'm just going to be marking this together, and I will be stitching it together on my machine. So this is the peplum. I already have my stay iron to it, and I'm going to be joining this center together, and the other one will be going into the zipper area. So now this is me fixing the lining on it, pinning it together so that it won't move, and I'll be able to stitch it easily. So I'm just going to stitch the lower part, and when I'm done, I'm going to open it up and top stitch on the lining so that it can lay very well. So you can see that I top stitch on the lining. So now I'm going to be joining the sides, the open parts. So I'm just going to be joining the sides on both sides. And this is the second layer. So I'm not going to be joining this together because of the curve I have, it's going to overlap at the center like this, and the other opening will go into the zipper. So I'm going to be joining the lining on it separately. So I'm going to place the lining on it like this also, and then stitch it all the way around. Do the same thing that I did to the first one. I'm going to top stitch on it, open it up, and do that to this second layer and also to the last layer, which is the third flare. So this is the first layer. I already top stitch on the waist area like this. So now the waist measurement, remember, is 31 inches, and then we have 1 inch on the zipper area, like 1 inch on both sides. So that will be giving us 33 inches. So that means we need 33 inches for this flare, but here we have 37 inches. So that means we have some extra inches, about 4 inches. So I'm just trying to pleat those extra now. So I pleated it on the center part a bit, and then I'm pleating some on the side, and I'm also going to pleat on the second side. And you can notice that I'm pleating it in the same direction. So now I'm going to measure what I have here. So hopefully I should have 33 inches now. But here I have 32 inches. So I still need 33 inches. So I'm just going to release the pleat a bit on this side. I don't want to touch the center part. So now by the time I measure, I have 33 inches. So which will go perfectly around the waistline. So now I'm going to bring this together like this. I'm going to be notching the center of this first flare. So I'm going to bring it together like this and then notch the center. This is because I'm going to be placing the other flare direct, like the overlap is going to be placed at the center. So I'm going to make, this is the second flare, I'm going to make it overlap about half of an inch. Nothing too serious. So I'm going to be placing that part where it overlap directly at the center. So I'm going to be pinning it down there. I'm going to make sure that it falls directly at the center. So now I'm going to be stitching, I'm going to be pinning the other part all around the first flare like this. But if I have excess on this second flare, I'm just going to pleat it on the first flare. So here you can see that it exceeds the first flare a bit, so I'm just going to pleat the excess. And you can notice that I'm not pleating where I have a pleat earlier, because if I do that, it's going to be bulky. So I'm going to do the same thing to the second side. So I'm going to be stitching this down on my measure. I'm going to start from the center. I'm going to stitch it this way and then the second side. So this is the third flare. I'm going to make it overlap also, and then I'm just going to do the same thing I did to the second layer to it. I'll place it directly at the center, and then I'm going to put it all around the other side. And so if there's an excess, I'm going to pleat it on both sides so that it can rhyme with the flare. So this is the 3 layers of the flare. So I'm going to be stitching them on the machine together. So this is the front part. I already opened it up, and so I'm going to be bringing this together to locate the center. So I'm going to be notching the center because the flare have to be directly at the center. Where we have that overlap, it has to be directly in the center. So remember that we already notched the center for this peplum. So we are going to be placing it at the center of the upper bodice like this. I'll make sure that it really aligns at the center. So I'm going to pin it together and then stitch the other side around to this side. Stitch from the center to this side, and then the second part also I'm going to stitch from the center to this side. So this is the peplum. I already fixed the zip, so I'm just going to fix the sleeve to this so you can see how beautiful it looks. So give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to this channel if you are yet to do so, also give your comment.